She had been chatting with this guy online for weeks. They seemed to have so much in common, similar taste in music, a shared love for dark humor, and even the same favorite coffee order. When he finally suggested meeting in person, she eagerly agreed. They chose a trendy little cafe downtown, the kind with overpriced lattes and tiny chairs. She arrived a bit early, nervously checking her reflection in the window and adjusting her hair. When he walked in, she smiled and waved, but something was off. He wasn't alone. Beside him was another guy, casually dressed and grinning. "Oh, hey, I hope you don't mind. I brought my friend along," he said casually. Her stomach dropped. Why would he bring someone to a date? She thought, trying to keep her composure. But before she could process it further, the friend looked at her more closely, and his eyes widened in recognition. "Wait a minute, I know you," he blurted out. She stared at him, and the realization hit her like a truck. It was Eric, her former classmate from high school, the one who had once accidentally spilled soda all over her during a school dance and later sent her an awkward apology note with way too many smiley faces. "Oh, hi, Eric," she said, forcing a smile. "Wow, small world, huh? Remember that dance? Man, I was such a klutz." He laughed, oblivious to the tension in the air. Meanwhile, her date, let's call him Dave, looked confused. "You two know each other?" he asked, glancing between them. "Yeah, we went to high school together," Eric said, clearly enjoying the growing awkwardness. "Cool," Dave said, completely missing the growing awkwardness. As they sat down, it quickly became apparent that this wasn't going to be a normal date. Eric dominated the conversation, reminiscing about high school memories she'd rather forget. He even brought up the time she had tripped during a relay race in gym class. "Remember that? You went flying." "Oh, man, good times," Eric said, laughing loudly. She forced a laugh, her face growing warmer by the second. Dave, meanwhile, seemed oblivious to her discomfort and actually found Eric's stories hilarious. The situation hit peak awkwardness when the waiter arrived to take their orders. "I'll have the usual," Eric said confidently. The waiter looked puzzled. "The usual?" "Uh-huh. Oh, sorry," Eric mumbled, realizing he wasn't in his regular coffee spot. She couldn't help but cringe. When it was her turn to order, her nervousness got the best of her. Instead of asking for a chai latte, she accidentally said, "I'll have a cheese latte." The table went silent for a moment before Eric burst out laughing. "Cheese latte, is that a new thing?" Her face burned with embarrassment. "I meant chai latte," she muttered, wishing the floor would swallow her whole. The rest of the date was a blur of Eric's endless chatter and Dave's poor attempts to bring her back into the conversation. By the time it ended, she was exhausted and more than ready to leave. As they said their goodbyes, Dave cheerfully said, "We should do this again sometime." She smiled weakly and nodded, knowing full well she wouldn't be replying to his next message. That night, as she recounted the story to her best friend, they both laughed so hard they cried. While the date was a disaster, at least it made for a hilarious story. I once went on a blind date, and my expectations were pretty standard. We had agreed to meet at a restaurant, and she seemed attractive in the pictures, so I was feeling positive. I arrived on time, and she showed up too. We sat down at the table, and that's when things started to get weird. She didn't say a word, absolutely silent, like I was a wall. I tried to start a conversation, which she just nodded or gave one-word answers. I thought maybe she was shy or not used to meeting strangers. But the longer it went on, the stranger it became. She kept eating without looking at me, not even a glance. 30 minutes later, dinner was finished. She put her fork down, stood up, and left without saying a word. I was left sitting there, completely confused. Something's not right, I thought. I grabbed my phone to check messages, and at that moment, I received a text from the girl I had originally planned to meet. Sorry, I can't make it tonight. Let's reschedule. I checked the time and it matched the meeting time, but then who was I having dinner with? I started to analyze everything, wondering if I'd mixed up places or faces. My thoughts became a jumbled mess. Who was she, if not the one I'd planned to meet? How did she manage to stay so silent and act so strangely? And so I was left without an answer to that question. A guy invited me out on a dinner date at a nice restaurant, and everything seemed fine at first. But as the evening went on, he kept leaving the table. First, it was to go to the bathroom, then to take a phone call. I started to feel a little awkward, but I brushed it off. Maybe he was just nervous or had something urgent to deal with. But then at some point, the waiter leaned in and quietly said to me, just so you know, he's having another date with a blonde in the next room. I froze. I looked at him in shock, and the waiter just shrugged like it was the most normal thing in the world. It turns out he had scheduled 2 dates at the same time with 2 different women in 2 different rooms of the same restaurant. I couldn't believe it. I was sitting there trying to enjoy my dinner while he was juggling both dates. Needless to say, I didn't stick around for the rest of the evening. I politely excused myself and left. It was the most bizarre date I'd ever been on.